session in which all the students of both of the sections of IT270 which are taught by me are joined, and both of the sessions of today would be recorded sessions. In the first session, I will describe the important questions from the midterm examination point of view. The questions which have high probability of becoming your short questions will be discussed. Since it's a long material, so we will just list the questions, and also if there is some kind of idea that you need to talk about, we can talk about that as well. In the second hour, which will again be a shared hour, which will be from 9 to 10, if you have any questions, we can take those questions in those particular hours. So starting our today's session, the first thing to remember, as I have already informed you, that the material for your midterm examination is from chapter 1 till chapter 5. The first 5 chapters are included. There will be short questions, 3 to 4 short questions. There will be MCQs, 15 MCQs, and there will be 10 true false. It will be a 1 hour duration paper. So the total number of short questions can be either 3 or 4. As far as MCQs and true false are concerned, when you have to work with MCQs and true false, you know that lecture slides are not sufficient. Although you don't need to remember the exact phrases, because in MCQs the phrases come before you and you can remember the correct phrase if you have studied carefully. So for MCQs and for true false, I would say that you need to go through the chapters from the book at least once with proper understanding. For short questions, as far as the conceptual questions are concerned, those conceptual questions can be well prepared from the lecture slides, although taking help from the book. And if you have studied once the textbook properly, then you don't need to go through the lecture slides again. You can answer the short questions as well. But there is going to be one applied question at least from either chapter 4 or chapter 5. That question is going to be an important question and you should prepare it well. That can only be prepared well if you have practiced it properly. So for the applied question, I would suggest that you practice the question properly. This was something that I had to inform you about the structure of the paper and some guidelines about how you should be preparing the paper. Now, going through the first 5 chapters from the book one by one, let's start from chapter 1 and let's see what are the important questions from chapter 1 that have a probability of appearing in the examination. As you know, chapter 1 is about the introduction of IT project management. There are no applied questions from chapter 1 which are expected to come. There can be only some kind of short conceptual question that we can expect from chapter 1, if something comes like that from it as well. The first important question from chapter 1, the first important short question from chapter 1 is going to be, what are the advantages of using formal project management? Means the question is, and it is also present in the lecture slides, it is present in the book as well. The basic purpose of question is that when you are executing projects, if someone is executing them informally and the other one is executing the project formally, what kind of benefits the formal project management can give? As we all know, it can give better control, it can give better visibility, it can give more successful products, it can reduce the cost, it can improve the coordination, work morale can be improved. These are a few things that are described here. Also, I needed to say that when you are attempting short questions, always look at the text of the short question and the space that is given to you. So if the text of the short question says to list or to name or something like that, then you don't need to give the detail. Also look at the space. Prepare your answer according to short questions. If the short question states to list something are to name something and the space is limited, then don't give too much detail. You should give just that much detail which is sufficient to fill, but it should be correct. But if you are asked to elaborate or to explain or to list and explain, name and explain some of them, then you need to give more detail in that question. So the first question, advantages of using formal project management. Second important question, what is a project and what are its major attributes? What is a project and what are its major attributes? As you remember, very quickly going through it, a project is a temporary endeavor. It is an activity that is carried out to produce some. I have not opened the slides. I am just telling you the questions, and since this is recorded, so you can download it again later on as well, and you can stop and pause it and look at the type of question that I have given. And then because I have not opened the lecture slides, I am describing the questions from the book point of view. So I don't know which particular lecture slide it is coming from. But you can later on list, and I'm giving you ample time to write the question as well, so you can look at the question and then look at the lecture slide. The second question that I am giving at the moment, what is a project and what are the attributes of a project? So a project is a temporary activity which is carried out to produce some products or some services. It has some customer, some end user. It has a defined start time. It has a defined end time. The defined outcome. These are some of the attributes of a project. So second important question from chapter 1, what is a project and what are its major attributes? Next important question, very important question from chapter 1, the triple constraints of a project management. Triple constraints of a project management include cost, scope, and time. So the question can be, what do we mean by triple constraints and what are the triple constraints of a project management? The triple constraints are the three conditions that impose on effective project management. These three conditions are time, which means that the project should be completed within time. Number 2, scope, all the objectives which have been defined for the project, scope, and cost, the money that has been allocated. So these are the three constraints, and this is the third important question from chapter 1. Let's see what are the project management framework. Project management framework, as you remember, the 9 knowledge areas. So the question can be, describe the major knowledge areas or list the major knowledge areas of project management. As you remember, there are 4 core knowledge areas, like time management, like scope management. There are 4 facilitating knowledge areas, like human resource management, like risk management, and there is 1 knowledge area which integrates all of these core and facilitating knowledge areas, which is called project integration management. So this question is the 4th important question from chapter 1, knowledge areas. Next important question. The top 10 important factors for a project to be successful. What are the 10 most important factors for the project to be successful? You can be asked to list all the 10, or you can be asked to explain any 1 or 2 of them. You don't need to remember the exact words, but your meanings should be same. So the top 10 factors for a project to be successful is also an important question from chapter 1. As I can see, there is going to be at least 1 short question from chapter 1. Next important question, the 10 most important skills. 10 most important skills of a project manager. Apart from his professional skills, the 10 most important skills of the project managers is the next important question. Can I see any other important question? No. These are 6 or 7 important questions from chapter 1 that you should be preparing properly. Now coming to the second chapter, which is chapter 2, there can be possibly a short question from chapter 2 as well, as I can anticipate. This chapter, as the name is, the project management and information technology context, how information technology plays important role in the execution of the projects. The first important question from chapter 2. First important question from chapter 2, how can we view the project? How can we view the project as a system? How can we view the project as a system, or what do we mean by the systems view of project management? This is the first important question from chapter 2, in which basically what has been described is that when we are executing a project, we should look at the project as a system. A system is something which accepts some input and generates some output. Similar is the case with the project. Project accepts inputs and delivers outputs. Just like a system, a project also needs to be managed. And the last important thing is that just like a system, the project needs to have some defined goals and objectives that the project should meet. So the first important question from chapter 2, what do we mean by the system view of a project? Second important question from chapter 2 is what are the 4 dimensions? What are the 4 dimensions of understanding an organization? What are the 4 dimensions of understanding an organization is the second important question. As you remember, the 4 aspects of understanding an organization were the structural frame, to see how the organization is structured, who is the chairman or who is the CEO, and what are the board of directors, and who are directors, and who are senior managers, etc. This is the structural frame. The second dimension is the human resource frame. What kind of people are working in the organization? What is their knowledge level? What is their skill level? What is their motivation level? What is their retention level? Stuff like that. Political frame, what kind of policies that organization works under, what kind of rules and regulations that organization works under, what kind of government structure controls the organization, and symbolic frame, the culture of the organization, the traditions of the organization, and the norms of the organization. So second important question, what are the 4 dimensions for understanding the organization? Next question, very important question, the organizational structures. 3 basic organizational structures that have been described in chapter 2, as you remember. One was the project-based organization, the other was function-based organization, and the last was matrix organization. And when we talk of matrix organization, a matrix organization can be further divided into a weak matrix organization, balanced matrix organization, and strong matrix organization. You can be asked to list various kind of just name various kind of organizational structures, or you can be asked to give 1 or 2 line description of these various structures of the organization. Always remember that if this question comes, don't forget to further explain that matrix organization is divided into further 3 sub-levels, which are weak matrix, strong matrix, and balanced matrix organization. Next important question from Chapter 2, what is the importance of top management commitment? What is the importance of top management commitment in a successful project, and how can top management help? This is the next question. What is the importance of senior management commitment and how can it help in making a project successful? As we know that all the resources are sanctioned by the senior project, all the benefits, all the projections are made by the senior management. So all the strategic decisions are taken by senior management. So if the senior management is not involved, in that case, the organization's project interest suffers and the project starts losing steam. So that is why it is important that projects are carried out with full support from the senior management. This is third important question from Chapter 2. Okay, next question, the next very important question from this chapter, product life cycles or system development life cycles from the perspective of project management. The question can be, what are the categories of software development life cycles for project managers? As you remember, we discussed in the class that there are two major categories. One is called predictive life cycle, the other is called adaptive life cycle. All the traditional software development life cycle models are system development life cycle models like rapid application development or waterfall or prototyping or spiral or increment based. All of these models are predictive life cycle models where you plan before and then execute later on. The second category of software system development life cycle models from the project manager's point of view are known as adaptive software development life cycle models, which include agile, which include extreme programming, which include Scrum and other such kind of development approaches in which the development starts very early on, and as the development grows, the planning improves as well. Overall success of the project improves as well. This is another important question. What are the major categories of software systems development life cycles from the project management point of view? Let's see if there is, there is another concept, another important question. What do we mean by outsourcing and what do we mean by virtual teams? What are the concepts of outsourcing and virtual teams? What are their advantages and what are their advantages? As you can remember, outsourcing means when we allocate a part of the project to some other company which may or may not be in our own geographical domain. They work some part of our operations and complete the services and deliver it to us. Virtual team is a kind of project structure where no specific office space is required. The people can work from their own convenience, from their own convenient locations, while the project manager, with the help of some tools, can facilitate their working. Both have certain advantages and disadvantages, and this is the last important question from Chapter 2. Chapter 2 also has a strong probability of one short question coming in it. Now coming to Chapter 3, let's see what the Chapter 3 says. Okay, so Chapter 3 talks about the project management process groups. If you remember, we talked about the 9 knowledge areas, and then integrating them with the 5 phases of project management, which are initiating, planning, executing, and controlling, right? So first important question that can come from chapter 3, as there are not too many important questions, but the first important question that can come from chapter 3, what are project charters and why kick-off meetings are necessary for successful project executions? What are project charters and why kick-off meetings are important for successful project execution? A project charter is the first formal contract that is agreed between the end users, customers on one side and the development team on the other side. A project charter normally describes some very small but important details, such as when the project will start, when the project will end, who will be answerable for successful execution of the project, what will be the funding of the project, what are the major objectives of the project. And a kick-off meeting is the meeting where all of these activities start finding shape. Once the project charter is agreed, once the project charter is properly defined, then the formal work on the project can be executed. In your book, there are some formal charters which have been described as well, and you can take help from them to understand what are the important elements of any particular charter and what is a kick-off meeting. Okay, next, there are any other important questions from this chapter? If we can see, no, I don't think there is any other important question from chapter 3. I don't see any short question as such coming from chapter 3. This is the only short question that can come from chapter 3. There are no applied questions that we can expect from chapter 3 as from the first 3 chapters as well. If there are any applied questions, those questions will either come from chapter 4 or those questions will come from chapter 5. So chapter 4, very important chapter. This chapter talks about the integration management, and the first important question from the integration management is what are the important processes of project integration management knowledge area, and what are their outputs, or what are their purposes, or what are their functions. As you can remember, there were a total of 6 processes in project integration management, which include development of project charter, development of project management plan, direction and management of project execution, monitoring and controlling the project work, performing integrated change control, and closing. These were the 6 processes which were in the knowledge area, and their defined outputs have also been described. If you get a short question like this, where you are asked to describe in small detail all the processes which are involved in a particular knowledge area, then if you remember, you have a particular slide in every lecture which lists all the important processes and their outputs. Remember that slide properly and list all the processes taken from that particular slide. So that is first important question from chapter 4. Next important question from chapter 4, what is SWOT analysis and what is its need? What is a SWOT analysis and what is its need? A SWOT analysis, if you remember, we had discussed in the class as well, a SWOT analysis is a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats analysis. In this analysis, what we do is we look at various alternatives which we have for the project, and from these alternatives we look at each alternative with respect to the benefits that this alternative currently has, and benefits that this alternative can offer potentially in future if this particular alternative is adopted. Similarly, we look at the weaknesses that this alternative presently has, and we look at major problems that we can potentially face if we continue with this particular alternative. This is known as SWOT analysis. When we start working on the project, we have various alternatives before us. Out of all of those alternatives, we carry out SWOT analysis and we look at the most appropriate alternative that we may adopt to make our project more and more successful. This is a very important question from chapter 4 to be a short question. Next important question from this chapter, there are applied questions, and definitely some sort of applied question can come from this chapter. The first important question from this chapter, applied question, which is second important question from this chapter, and that is to calculate the net present value. To calculate the net present value is the first applied question that can come in your examination. In your examination, you may be given the data about a particular project that can have the benefits, the costs, and the discount rate over a particular number of years, just as has been given in the example in the book as well. You may have like data of 4 years or 5 years or something like that, and from that data you may have to calculate the net present value of that project at the end of the years, if this is 5 years or if this is 6 years, and then that answer should be a correct answer according to the formula that we practiced in the class, and many of you, as I already know, have already practiced that formula where you take the first money and keep it aside, and then adding the inflation or discount rate, dividing it from the total amount of saving that you have made, and taking the power of the years that are collected till that time. This is a simple formula that you have to apply. So this is the first applied question from chapter 4 that has a very high probability of coming in your examination. So prepare this applied question very well. Next important question is return over investment. Return over investment formula, as we already know, total discounted benefits minus total discounted costs divided by discounted costs. Very simple formula to calculate return over investment. You will be given certain values. For example, what is the current cost, discount rate, current benefit. You will first reduce the amounts of cost and benefit from the discounted point of view to get the actual value at this time. Then you will subtract the costs from the benefits and divide it from the total discounted costs. This will give you the value. If you multiply it with 100, it will give you the percentage as well. Very simple formula, but this can also be an applied question from chapter 4. So third important question, and 2 questions so far are applied questions. Next important question, as you remember, we talked about charters. We already talked about the charter, project charter and kickoff meeting in chapter 3. In chapter 4, you have a proper template of project charter, and description of project charter as well. So what is a project charter and what are the important elements of a project charter? This can be a short question, and there can be an applied question as well. If you remember, we said that you can be given a 2 or 3 paragraph summary, and from that 2 or 3 paragraph summary you may need to write a sample project charter which may include the important elements It is not necessary to include the optional elements, but it may include the mandatory elements like the title of the project, like the date of start of the project, date of finish of the project, the key schedules, the budget, the project manager, the project objectives, the success criteria, and then at the end the signature space. This is what a project project charter should look like. Another important question, another applied important question, if I can see weighted scoring model. Weighted scoring model, you may get an applied question where you may be given a simple table comprising of 5-6 elements. You also be given the weights and the scores, the total scores for those factors by various projects, which you will first relate to the percentage, reduce them to the percentage, and then add all the percentages to know which of the project options has the highest score. This is the fourth applied question that can come from chapter 4. So let us look if we have any other important question from chapter 4. Let's see what if we have any other important question from chapter 4. Change control. Change control is the last important question, which is the practical questions are to calculate the return over investment, to calculate the net present value, to measure the weighted score of various project alternatives, and to write the project charter. These are the 4 applied questions from chapter 4 that you need to prepare. Okay, is it clear now? What are the 4 applied questions that I mentioned from chapter 4? Do we all have clear? Okay, fine. That's great. The last question, change control, configuration control, change control board, baseline. These are some concepts which are at the end of chapter 4. Configuration control is the department of the project which maintains the current formal documents, current formal artifacts or deliverables of the project. Baseline is the current accepted version of any artifact that has been created during the project, like the design, the architecture, the code, the database. The current stable version is known as base. Any change that needs to be implemented in the project during the project execution has to be properly discussed and properly described before a decision is taken whether to implement the change or not, and this decision is taken at the level of change control board, which is responsible for defining and deciding whether a change can be implemented or not. This is the last important question from chapter 4, which is a short question and you can be asked something about it. So there are a total of 6 important short questions from chapter 4. Now coming to the last chapter of the examination, and that is project scope management. From project scope management, we also have the probability of getting at least one applied question, which is to create a work breakdown structure. So we will come to that. But first, the short question, the first short question, just like chapter 4, which was about the knowledge area of integration management, chapter 5 is about the knowledge area of project scope management. So the first short question that can come from this chapter would can ask you to describe the processes and the outputs of project scope management knowledge area. If you remember properly, there were 5 processes in project scope management knowledge area. These were collect requirements, define scope, create WBS, verify scope, and control scope, and the outputs are also defined in the book. Again, I must emphasize that we don't want you to give us the exact words. We want you to give us the complete understanding of the question that has been asked you according to the space that is allocated to you for this purpose as well. So, first short question from chapter 5, describe various processes involved in scope management and their expected outputs. Second short question from chapter 5, which can be important. What do we mean by collecting requirements? What do we mean by requirements engineering or collecting requirements or requirement analysis? And what are the methods of collecting requirements? If, as you remember, various methods of collecting requirements: questionnaires, interviews, surveys, prototyping, focus groups, observations. These were various methods. And why we get the requirements? Because the system is built according to the requirements. What our client wants, what our end users want. These are the requirements that we need to implement in the system. So second important question, what is the requirement analysis, or what is requirement engineering, what are requirement collection, and what are different methods of collecting the requirements? Next important question from chapter 5, next important question is creating the work breakdown structure. So this is purely an applied question. If you remember, let me again emphasize, this is an applied question. To create a WBS, if this question comes, you will be given a case study. 2 paragraphs, maybe most probably no more than 2 paragraphs, and you will be asked to create a WBS. It can be a product-based WBS, or it can be a process or phase-based WBS. If you remember properly, we talked about both different kinds of WBS. Just to remind you, it will be a very simple question. What you will have to do is you will see whether you have been asked to make a process-based or you have been asked to make a product-based. If you have to make a product-based WBS, extract all the nouns from the case study, and then look what is the hierarchy of these nouns, which nouns become the parents, which nouns become their children, and then so forth, down and down. While in your examination, most probably the WBS that you will make will not be more than 2 layers, it means parents and children, but still look at it carefully, and if you can make it more beautiful, that is more meaningful, that is much more appreciated. So if you have to make a product-based WBS, extract all the nouns and then arrange those nouns in the form of hierarchy that a WBS is. At the top, it will be the project. After that, the nouns which are the major components. After that, the nouns which are major tasks or divisions. And in this way, you will create a product-based WBS. If you are asked to make a process-based or phase-based WBS, then extract all the verbs. Extract all the verbs, and just like the product-based WBS, make them in a hierarchy. At the top, keep the project. After that, keep the phases, and in the phases, put all various activities which have been asked from you. So, whichever WBS you have to make, you can easily make it. It is going to be a very easy question. You won't need to make any mathematical calculations for this, but it is an applied question and you should be practicing it very carefully. After that, there are short questions from the chapter 5 which can be important. If there is no applied question, definitely there are going to be questions from chapter 4 and chapter 5. Applied are short conceptual questions. It is totally, it will be, but there are going to be. So the next important question from chapter 5, third important question, various approaches to create a WBS. If you remember, we talked about three major approaches: analogy approach, top-down approach, four major approaches: analogy approach, top-down approach, bottom-up approach, and mind mapping approach. Four approaches were discussed in this chapter, and you can be asked to describe or list or explain these four approaches. If you remember, you did an assignment for the mind mapping as well. Next question: what is a WBS dictionary, and what are the guidelines for creating WBS and WBS dictionary? This is also a purely short conceptual question from chapter 5, but you should have a look at it. What is the purpose of WBS? What do we mean by WBS dictionary? What is the utility of WBS, and what is the utility of WBS dictionary? This is going to be an important question which you should be preparing. Yeah, next important question: what is scope control, and what activities should be performed to make sure what activities should be performed to make sure that scope problems don't occur? What is scope control? Scope control means to create such kind of activities in the project which make sure that project does not go beyond what has been defined in the WBS. Any kind of difference that takes place between how the project is executing and how the project was supposed to be executed according to WBS is known as variance. The purpose of controlling the scope is to reduce this variance, and there are some practices which are carried out to make sure that this variance does not occur. These activities are also described in your textbook and lecture slides as well. Last important question from chapter 5: how can we reduce incomplete and changing requirements? What are incomplete and changing requirements, and how can we reduce them? Incomplete and changing requirements are the most problematic kind of requirements. These are the requirements which can affect the overall project plan execution, which can affect our overall understanding of the project, which can create errors in the product that comes at the end of the project. So these are very dangerous and should be avoided, and various techniques should be adopted to make sure that we are not ending up with incomplete and changing requirements. This is the last important question from chapter 5, and this is the last important question for this midterm exam. So this was a quick revision of various questions that can be important that you need to prepare. If you want to get good marks. It is not important. Remember, there are two things. Yeah, it is long, but it is still not like if you were taking the exam of IT 101, if you remember, you had to do 8 chapters, half of the book, 8 or 9 chapters. That was long. This is not that long. Just remember that there are 5 major applied questions that you need to practice: net present value, return over investment, project charter, weighted score, and WBS. Yeah, it is recorded. It is no problem. It is recorded. So there are 5 applied questions, out of which anyone can come. You need to practice them, and the remaining, if you go through the book at least once, you can attempt all of the questions. That is one thing that I had to again revise. Second thing, I am not looking for the exact word. What I am looking for is, for applied question, it is 2 parts. 1, you follow the proper method. 2, you give the correct answer. For short questions, you give the right answer in whatever words, correct or false. That does not matter, but the concept that you are conveying is the right one. Payback analysis. No, return over investment, net present value, weighted scoring, project charter, and WBS. These are the 5 applied questions that are included. Okay. Any other questions?